The theme of population and data sciences is a union of two different areas of study that have actually grown together naturally. So epidemiology is the study of what causes disease and how frequent it is. And increasingly, we're using very large data sets, such as UK Biobank, which has about 500,000 people in the study. And we're finding that we're having to develop new techniques for analysing very large data sets.
The population data science theme is a cross-cutting theme, which is really about developing data analysis methods for all the different data types and building bridges across different areas in ophthalmology in order to do analysis across different data types. This data is a potential goldmine of information that we need to exploit. However, doing it manually using old techniques is not possible anymore given just the size of the data. So developing new machine learning algorithms is really important.
The data that we gather relates to ophthalmology in that the eye is affected by many diseases that have the same risk profile as heart disease or other degenerative diseases. We also find that we can study the features of the eye and get an idea about the risk of other diseases such as heart attacks or strokes from the examinations that we carry out. So the analysis works in both ways. This theme is, I think, vitally important for us to remain competitive and at the forefront of ophthalmological research. Data science is it's a rapidly growing, rapidly expanding area of work and academic and commercial research. So if we're not doing it, then we're really going to be left behind, and also not be able to deliver on our mission for improving the health of patients, because I think there are now very powerful tools for identifying what causes disease and how to prevent it, that if we weren't doing this work, we wouldn't find out. What we'd hope is that we'll be able to identify a number of genes and the particular characteristics within those genes which increase the risk for patients, and then take that to develop a particular prognostic or diagnostic test that we can start using in the clinics to affect the way that patients are managed. And that's the sort of thing that we've got on the 5 to 10 year horizon. We're hoping to develop that within a 10-year window.